They were young, adventurous, and full of life. They had a dream of exploring the world and making a difference. They had planned a 6-week trip to Panama where they would learn Spanish, volunteer with children, and enjoy the natural beauty of the country. But their dream turned into a nightmare. What happened to Kris, Cremers and Lisanne Front, the lost girls of Panama? How did they end up in the depths of the jungle, injured and desperate? How did their backpack and their bones end up in a river, miles away from where they were last seen? And who or what was behind their mysterious disappearance and death? This is their story, a story of tragedy and mystery that will haunt you and make you wonder, what if it was you? On April 1st, 2014, they set off for a hike on the El Pianista Trail, a scenic route that winds through the cloud forest near the Baru volcano in Phuket, a town popular with tourists and expats. They had a backpack with some essentials, a camera, and 2 cell phones. They also had a dog, which belonged to the owners of the restaurant where they had brunch that morning. They never returned. The next day, their host family reported them missing, and a search operation was launched. The dog came back alone, but there was no sign of the girls. The authorities and the locals scoured the area, but the dense vegetation and the rugged terrain made it difficult. The families of Kris and Lisanne flew to Panama, bringing their own detectives and experts. They hoped for a miracle, but feared the worst. 10 weeks later, a local woman found a blue backpack in a rice paddy along the river. It was the girls' backpack. Inside, there were their belongings, including their camera and their phones. The backpack was dry and clean, as if it had been placed there recently. The woman took it to the police, hoping it would shed some light on the mystery. What they found was disturbing. The camera had 133 photos, taken between April 1st and April 8th. The first few photos showed the girls smiling and posing on the trail, enjoying the scenery. The last photo, taken on April 8th at 10:39 a.m., showed a twig with some plastic bags and candy wrappers tied to it, apparently as a marker. The photos in between were dark and blurry, taken in the middle of the night, with no flash. Some showed the back of Kris's head, with blood on her temple. Some showed the jungle floor with rocks and branches. Some showed nothing at all. The photos seemed to indicate that the girls were lost, injured, and desperate. The phones had more clues. The girls had tried to call 112, the emergency number in Europe, several times, starting from April 1st at 4:39 p.m. They also tried to call 911, the emergency number in Panama, but none of the calls went through due to the lack of signal. The last attempt was on April 5th at 10:51 a.m. The phones also showed that the girls had turned them on and off, presumably to save battery. They had also checked the time and the date frequently. The last activity on the phones was on April 11th, when someone entered the wrong PIN code on Lisanne's phone at 11:56 a.m. The data from the phones and the camera raised more questions than answers. What happened to the girls after they left the trail? How did they survive for so long in the jungle, without food, water, or shelter? How did they get injured, and what caused Kris's bleeding? How did their backpack end up in the river, miles away from where they were last seen? And most importantly, where were their bodies? The authorities conducted a DNA analysis on the backpack and its contents and confirmed that they belonged to Kris and Lisanne. They also searched the river and its banks and found some bones and a boot, which also matched the girls. The bones were fractured and bleached, suggesting exposure to the elements and animal activity. The cause of death could not be determined, but the authorities ruled it as an accident due to a fall or a flash flood. The families of Kris and Lisanne were not satisfied with this explanation. They hired their own forensic experts who examined the evidence and the photos. They found some anomalies, such as the lack of fingerprints on the backpack, the absence of any signs of a struggle or a fall, and the strange behavior of the phones. They also found some inconsistencies in the official reports, such as the dates and the locations of the findings. They suspected foul play and suggested that the girls might have been abducted, tortured, and killed by someone who then planted the backpack and the bones to cover up the crime. The case of Kris Cremers and Lisanne Front remains unsolved and has sparked many theories and speculations. Some people believe that the girls were victims of a serial killer, a drug cartel, or a cult. Some people believe that they encountered a paranormal entity, such as a witch, a demon, or a chupacabra. Some people believe that they simply got lost and succumbed to the elements, or that they committed suicide. No one knows for sure what happened to the lost girls of Panama, and perhaps no one ever will. Their story is a tragic and haunting mystery that haunts the minds of those who seek the truth.